Hello, 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 and welcome to Your Deep Life for Christian Women with me, your host, Barbara Chambers, where we dive deep into becoming who God has called us to be and learn to live with joy in empowered faith and on purpose. Sis, I know life can be difficult. There are moments when we question our place, wondering how our story fits into God's plan, especially when life is interrupted with a challenge. But I'm here to remind you, you are designed, equipped, and empowered for purpose. God is using every part of your story for His glory. In today's episode, I am so honored to be joined by a distinguished woman of God who specializes in a topic we don't talk about enough: loss and grief. My guest, Dr. Darlene Williams, affectionately known as Dr. D, the grief expert, is a nationally recognized grief and transformation authority who helps individuals, faith leaders, and organizations heal from their life's deepest losses and rise to lead with renewed purpose. Dr. D is a seasoned executive leader and a certified master life, grief, and executive coach. She brings over 30 years of experience across nonprofit leadership, government, academia, and ministry. She is a trusted voice for the brokenhearted, helping them rise again, stronger, wiser, and whole. Her unique coaching frameworks are even used in educational and leadership settings across the US. She is a prolific scholar, holding both a doctorate in philosophy and a doctorate in religious education. She is the author of 11 books, wow, on healing, restoration, grief, and leadership, and has received numerous awards, including the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award presented by former US President Joseph Biden in 2023. I am so grateful and I'm so excited to have Dr. D with us today as we talk about the journey of grief and her dynamic framework, Restoring Bountiful Joy. So take a seat and let's dive in. Welcome, Dr. D, to the Your Deep Life for Christian Women podcast. I am so honored and grateful that you are with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation too. You are a phenomenal woman who has done so many things and is making such great impact across the USA. Achieved so many wonderful awards. Oh my gosh, when I was looking through your accolades and through your award achievements, I'm like, Lord, you introduced me to this amazing woman. Thank you.
Oh gosh, thank you so
Seriously,
much.
really, really grateful. So I want to dive straight in, but what does purpose mean to you? That's a question I ask all my guests. So what does purpose mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So purpose to me really means, you know, being able to walk in what you're called to do, who you're called to be, and who you're called to serve. A lot of us sometimes I think it's hard to find our purpose, but when we think about, what makes us smile, what makes us gives us joy, and then what I don't want to say is easy for us to do, but what just keeps coming back to us, something that we are just totally aligned with. I consider that to be purpose.
So thank you for sharing that, because you are a grief expert and a certified grief coach, right? Among other things.
Yes.
And your story is, wow, I mean, your story is amazing. I don't know how you went through that, but are you open to sharing your story of grief and how did you become a grief coach? How did that align with your purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always say I didn't find grief coaching found me.
Mm-hmm.
In my years of working 30 something years as a nonprofit executive in New York City
Mm-hmm.
government, I've always been drawn to organizations and positions where I was helping other people. So it's always been, this is my purpose, to serve.
Yeah.
Um, but I have to go back, and I haven't done this in any other conversation. I don't know why you made me think of it. I go back to when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. My grandmother came to live with me. So my family's from Alabama. So my grandmother had the farm on McCall Road, the road that's named after my family. And she went through a bout of dementia and Alzheimer's after my grandfather passed away, and we had to bring her. We closed up the farm. We brought her up to live with us, and I watched my mother's mother. I watched my mother take care of her and care for her, and that taught me, the importance of caring for our loved ones, no matter what. Right, when they're
Mm-hmm.
in a tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
Little did I know, decades later, the same thing would happen in my adulthood, where I would have to see that and do it. So over the past 6 years, my entire childhood household passed away.
Wow.
My father, Reverend Brown, passed away July 2019.
Mm,
And I watched my mother care for him up until his passing at home.
mm,
And just when I was getting mommy back to getting out and doing things, going to
mm.
church, this was her childhood sweetheart. They've been together since they were 2 years old.
Oh,
If
wow.
they were alive, they would be 80 years old and married for 60 years.
Wow.
So they grew up together. Um, and she was just getting back on her feet. It was right after COVID. And then she just called me one morning, a year and a half later, and said she wasn't feeling well. Little did I know, taking her to the doctor, that June, when I took her, by September, she had had her fourth surgery. By October, they told me she wasn't going to make it. By November, I brought her home for in home hospice, and she
Mm,
passed here in my living room that July. That
wow.
was a year and a half after my father passed. And I have one sibling.
Mm,
Um, and the following February, my last February 2024,
mm-hmm.
my only sibling passed away.
Oh,
And then last year, 6 months after she passed away, I became very ill. And the doctors told me I wasn't going to make it. And I had 3 surgeries from October 2024 to November. Um, so that's why I say grief found me. I
mm,
wrote my second book, Father, Mother, Sister, My Grief But God, Moving Forward Without Pieces of My Heart,
mm,
because of going through that compounded grief, right? That is conflicted, compounded grief, where you have
mm-hmm.
loss after loss after loss. What's not in that book is everything else that happened. So after my father passed away, he was the oldest of 14. His second sibling, his brother, passed away a month after him. My mother's sister-in-law, who was the last person she spoke to on her deathbed here in my living room, passed away 5 months after her. And then 2 months ago, my 51-year-old cousin dropped dead from a heart attack at
My
51 years old,
God,
leaving a
my
13-year-old boy.
Lord, my Lord.
So I think I've literally lost probably about 10 to 12 family members in the past 8 years.
Mm,
Um, and it's something when, especially as as a believer, so I'm Reverend Dr. Darlene Williams, I know about transformation and about loss, but it's hard to focus on that when you're losing so many people. And I miss my parents and my sister
mm,
dearly. I am Reverend Brown's daughter, so I miss my family. But it really propelled me into full-time entrepreneurship and building this amazing business with this amazing platform, because these are things that people don't want to talk about.
Mm,
You know, I never forget when I was cleaning out my parents' apartment that they've been in since 1975. Someone said to me, you should be over this already. How long is it going to take you to clean out this apartment? We need the keys back after 30 days. I'm like, they've been in this apartment since 1975. Can you imagine the
yes.
life that's in this apartment?
Yes.
So I think very consciously wanted to find a way to help other people like me,
Mm,
whether it's the faith leader who is trying to lead the congregation and doing services and homegoings for their parishioners when they themselves are grieving the loss of that
mm-hmm,
life.
mm-hmm,
The executive, I was president and CEO of a nonprofit organization, 4,000 staff, $1 billion budget. And I'm coming home every day to my mother who's lying in my living room on hospice and trying to walk in with a smile on my face, be the mother, be the wife, all the things. And, you ask somebody, how are you today? And the typical answer is, I'm fine. You're not fine. You're not fine.
yes.
So I feel great to be on the other side helping the old me, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing your story because we don't think about in our reality, right? We've got these title positions and we're going through everyday life,
Yes.
but behind the scenes, there's something deeper going on, right? And we're not necessarily recognizing and understanding the impact that someone is really going through when they've lost a life. And people think that, after a few months or, after 6 months, after a year, you should have been able to move on. You should have been able to, you know, get on with your life and just pick things up again. But the reality is that's not the case. When like your parents have been a part of your life forever,
Yeah.
right? That's been your security, your love, your blanket, your whatever you want to call it, right? So, wow. How do you, how do you, because grief isn't just about somebody losing, you
Right.
losing a life. Grief is a lot more than that. How
Yeah.
do you help people to recognize that what they're feeling or what's holding them back sometimes is more than just the loss of a life? It's grieving of something.
Yeah. We teach people, and we also help faith leaders, establish grief and loss ministries for their parishioners. But we teach people that grief is more than, it's not only the loss of life. It
Mm,
can be the loss of something that is still very much around that you can touch and see, but you don't have access to it anymore, right? So
mm,
it's something that you once loved. Um, Grieving a relationship that you don't
mm,
have anymore, but the person is still around. Grieving an identity that you have. I've had clients who have retired from, working 20, 30 years, and they saw themselves and their purpose in who they were as an
yeah,
employee in the
yes,
profession.
yes.
And then when they don't have that anymore, they're grieving that. Um, People who have families that are going through illnesses, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's or um, illnesses where they can't get up and do the things they used to do. I've had someone who had their leg amputated and they used to be a jogger. They're grieving the fact that they can't jog anymore. For
Mm,
some people, that may seem simple, but that's a loss, right? That's
mm-hmm.
that's not having something that was very important to you. One of my other clients, her father passed away, and she said on a call that she wasn't necessarily grieving the loss of her dad. She was grieving the fact that he would not be there to walk her down the aisle or
Mm,
be there for her children as a
mm,
grandfather, because that was something so important to him.
mm-hmm.
Um, so it's really, we start like anything with awareness, understanding, and recognizing something. that is not there that you're missing.
Mm,
My first book, Freedom Positioning System, I wrote in 2014. And that book, we turned that into our signature framework that we use for everything, for education, for coaching, for our book series. And that framework helps teach you how to be free from those things that keep you bound, that you don't recognize. So, freedom of approval from others, freedom of everyone's perception, freedom from
mm,
unforgiveness, from anger, from bitterness, from resentment, from negative body image.
mhm.
And those things, if you really think about it, they tie into grief and loss. Because if you're not free from those internal things, then when you go through a life challenge, you can hold on to it and not even realize that it's something else, like you said.
Yeah. How do how do people work through it? I mean, we're surviving, we're doing life, but how do we work through that? How do we start? We might become aware, but how do we process it? How do we
Yeah.
come to some kind of place of healing?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the goal, right? The
Yeah,
transformation,
yeah.
the place of healing. You know, we take our clients through the modules and they're not linear. So, you know, you may not get to the module on perception or anger because you're at the module for forgiveness.
Mm,
And forgiveness, maybe not of someone else, but of yourself. So we hone in on what is the thing that is holding you back. Why are you not? And I don't like to use, getting over it, because I believe that grief doesn't get smaller. I
no.
have an analogy that I use, like, we just evolve around it, right? So the grief doesn't necessarily go away. Our life just continues. So we help people figure out and walk through how their life can continue without that thing if it's not coming back. Because we use a term that, life is for the living, and your loss is could not be the end, it could actually be the beginning and your becoming. So it's really helping people find the willingness to want to move forward, because you have to want to move forward, but
Mm,
also to understand that your life is meant to be lived, and your life is meant to have joy, and you can have that joy and not feel guilty about it. I remember when my not so much with my dad. My parents died from 9/11 cancer.
mm.
They were both at ground zero. All those people that I mentioned were all at ground zero. um
Wow.
so, that was a tough thing for me.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
like, come down on 9/11 and get in the microphone and read the name. No, I don't think I want to do that. I know it's been
Mm,
over 20 something years,
mm,
but, you have to get to the point where you want to move forward without that thing that you don't have right now. Um, and our modules help take people through that. But we walk alongside people,
mm.
and that's one thing about coaches, and this, we're not
Yeah.
here to counsel. We're not here from a clinical perspective. We're not here to give you the answers. We are here to guide you through the journey, to walk alongside of you in a holistic way,
Mhm,
that'll help you get to the next place.
mhm,
If that next place is clinical, if that next place is something else, then we help you with that. But our role is to be that sounding board,
mm.
right? And a sounding board that can help give you that detour if you're going off track a little bit, and put you back. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Put you back on the right track, but
Yeah,
not do the work for you.
yeah,
It's so gentle.
yes, yeah, yeah, you're so right. Um, I'm thinking about those there, you talked about um people who are grieving the loss of something, whether it be a job, an identity, a job or a limb or something that was very important to them, right? And most people get stuck in their brains and they're stuck in their heads about they want to move on, They know they should move on.
Yeah.
They know that life will never be the same again, but they just can't move on. They're just stuck in that place of what was and can no longer ever be. Is there hope for them too?
Absolutely. Everything starts with mindset. It's
Mm,
how we see it. And I use this analogy of having the word grief in a jar, and the jar gets bigger and the word grief stays the same, right? So there's hope as long as you are willing. And when people come to you to for coaching, that's the first sign that they're willing, that they acknowledge that something is wrong, something's
yes.
not right, and I
Yeah.
need some help.
Yes.
So as long as you have the willingness, there's hope. And if you're willing to honestly just divorce your previous mindset, and we know divorce takes time. I hate to use divorce as an analogy too, but doesn't happen overnight, but you have to be willing to divorce your mindset, your way of thinking, in order to move forward. And
Mm,
depending on your situation, that can mean different things. That can mean removing yourself from distractions. It could be
mm,
removing yourself from influences that are not part of your process that you're going. It could mean changing your habits, changing your routine, affirmation, scripture, meditation.
mm.
It depends on what that person needs, but all of the techniques that we give to our clients, they all focus on you changing your mindset. Because if you're not willing to do that, then it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. It's so, so true. And like you said, we're both coaches here, right? And
Yeah.
so it all begins with a choice, right?
Yeah.
And it's about, do I want to change my mindset? And what frustrates me sometimes is that we as Christians, right, we believe that God is the one that's going to help us change our minds, right? Now, God can influence some of those decisions, but ultimately, it's us who has to make the choice. The Bible says, you be renewed in your mind, right?
Yeah.
You do the work of renewing your mind. God's not going to change our mind. And what I love is that God does give us the will to choose, right, what we want to do next.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
when we make the choice, He then leads us on the path to healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it so perfectly, be transformed by the renewing of our mind,
Yeah.
because God is not a manipulator.
No.
He gives us free will. So I'm glad you said that. He's not Satan. He's not going to come in here and try to manipulate us and fool us.
Mm,
God's going to give us, the options, tell us what the choices are, whisper that in our ear, put people in our path, give us the confirmation.
mm.
But at the end of the day, he's going to say, just like Adam and Eve, Eve, there's the apple. You can either have it or not, right? It's our choice.
Yes, yes. So you've often said, I've lived healing, not just taught it,
Oh, yeah.
right? What does that mean exactly?
Oh, my goodness. What does that mean? Um, you know, I there's something about lived experience,
Mhm,
when it comes to coaching and teaching. And
mhm.
I also teach at 4 different colleges, undergrad,
Wow.
graduate, and I teach
Wow.
in seminary as well.
Yes.
And when I'm teaching my students, I often hear myself giving examples. Yeah, I did that at this organization, or this happened. And when I stop and listen, I'm like, I have lived experience, and I see they're more intrigued if, Professor Williams is teaching about public policy and administration and nonprofits. And I can say, when I was at this nonprofit, this is what my team did. It's the same thing in coaching.
Mhm,
Um, so I can relate to my clients because of my lived experience with
mm,
grief and loss, compounded grief and loss, like steady back to back grief and loss.
mm,
And they weren't easy, right? I was the person that I see on TV sitting at the side of the hospital bed while her loved one is in a coma playing music in the person's ear, thinking that they would hear it and it would help them wake up. That was me, right? With my dad, I was the one that you see, change the whole house. I remember calling my husband and saying, that love seat that we have in front of the bay window, can you move it and put it in the garage because mommy's hospital bed will be there shortly? And he was like, I'm sorry,
Wow.
what?
Wow.
Like, the
Wow.
hospital bed's on the way. We're doing
Yeah.
in-home hospice, right?
Yeah.
So, that quote to me is so critical for us not to just assist our clients, but to share our testimony, in a way that they believe that we care, and that we help them.
Mhm.
Revelation says, as we live by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our
Yeah.
testimony.
Yes.
And I've had to understand that it's selfish not to share my testimony, because my testimony could be someone else's breakthrough.
Yes.
It could be the one thing that someone needs to hear
Yeah.
to help them make it through.
Yeah.
So I definitely, share appropriately. And that's one of the trainings that I do in learning how to use your story, not just to, it's not something that you just share just because.
Mm.
It has to be relative and it has
Yeah.
to provide that transformation. So I've lived healing. I've absolutely lived healing. So I may have the book knowledge to teach it.
Yeah.
I may know the clinical terminology that I
Mhm.
can share, but I also have lived it. So I definitely understand.
You have a beautiful framework called Restoring Bountiful Joy. How does it guide people through the grief and healing process? How did it help you get through? How did you find joy? Because obviously you've dealt with a lot of grief, but you don't come across as a woman who is stuck in it. You've moved forward and you've been able to restore your joy.
Yeah. Yeah. So Restoring Bountiful Joy is named after my parents, RBJ, their initials, Robert Brown Jr. and Betty Jean Brown.
Oh,
That's where Restoring
wow.
Bountiful Joy came from. And my father used to call my mother BJ. So his name is Robert. So RBJ. And it came to me so clearly because I couldn't, there's a separation for me between happiness and joy. The
Hmm.
joy of the Lord is my strength. And I know that joy from God not only gives me strength, but it is not something that's temporary, right? If something happens tomorrow, happiness can go away, but joy is different, it's deeper.
Yeah.
And I knew that in order to go on and be the wife, the mother, the grandmother, the person, the minister that I needed to be, after losing my entire family, I had to restore my joy, but restore bountiful joy, not just any type of joy. I need to have
Mm.
bountiful joy.
Yes. Yeah.
And God said, okay, the business needs to be restoring bountiful joy. But remember, those are the initials of your parents. So my parents were so amazing that I wanted to do something in their honor. I do something every year. It's a pre-Mother's Day brunch in honor of my
Hmm.
mother.
Hmm.
And we, give out awards to different women in the community that
Mm.
have really served,
Mm.
and sown joy into people's lives. So
Mm.
Restoring Bountiful Joy is an honor of my parents. It guides people through the process of the freedom positioning system framework of how to get to that bountiful, everlasting joy. It's faith centered, but again, it starts with recognizing those 10 things that can keep you from having joy.
Can you name some of those things? Are you okay
Yeah.
with that?
So, freedom of perception. Um, if we are constantly looking for what other people think and allowing that to hold us back, we can't
Mm.
move forward.
Yeah.
Um, as an entrepreneur, right? If you are, going live or you're doing videos and you are afraid, and our coach has said this to us, right? You record it 100 times because you're worried about what someone else is going to think about it.
Yeah.
You're worried about their perception, right? So, being free from that, because it's holding you back. Freedom from approval of others is the same
Mm,
thing.
mm,
Freedom from anger and bitterness, holding on to things, and holding grudges. I've known people to hold grudges for years,
yeah.
and not understanding how that holds you back internally. These are things that, we think they're not sins because we don't see it. It's not murder, it's not adultery, it's
Yeah.
not, bigotry,
Yes.
but it's those internal sins. And for me, those are the worst ones, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth
Mouth speak.
speaks. So what you hold in your heart
Mm,
can hold you back. And there's a cost for that. There's a spiritual cost, there's an emotional cost, there's a
mm.
financial cost.
Yeah. And sometimes even a physical cost, because holding all that tension
Mhm.
in your body can, all that, you're repressing your emotions, you're repressing something that's going
Yeah,
to impact you in some way physically, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And my 51-year-old cousin, he passed of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And he was stressed. He was so stressed.
Mhm.
And we don't think about how these things that we have control over
Yes.
can hinder us and the people closest to us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, so true. Um, I really appreciate you sharing that because I don't think we think about um, the things that we take for granted as well. It's, I'm not sinning, right? I'm just
Yeah,
choosing not to speak to that person anymore
that's right.
because in my eyes, I'm protecting myself, right? But there's still the anger and the frustration and whatever else you might feel against something or someone, and you're holding all of that in. That's
Yeah,
causing deeper pain, deeper anguish than we can sometimes recognize. We can't even recognize it, right? So,
right.
Dr. D, you've written loads and loads of books. I'm just like blown away. 12 books you've written. Is it 12 books? 12
Yeah,
books?
12.
Yes. Wow. So how does your book series, The Pen of Healing, help move readers from a place of pain to purpose?
Yeah. Great question. So the children's book series came third, and the children's book series I saw as I was going through my grief journey. My
Mm,
children are grown, right? All over the age of 24. But I saw how grief impacted their lives, not just my grief, losing their grandparents and their
mm,
aunt, but just also other things that have happened. And then I thought about, you know, do we really help children with grief and loss? Do we really help take them through the process at their level and what they could be going through and enduring? So, it's there's a book for each, a boy and a girl version for elementary, K to
mm,
4, then middle school, then high school, and then college is more of a journal
mhm,
of identity. But the characters in the book go through something, right? It may not be loss related to death, but it's something at their level, at their age, that's important to them. It
mhm,
could be isolation, it could be bullying. There are
mm,
characters that go through losing a grandmother. There's a character that goes through wanting to learn how to journal and
mm,
becoming a leader, in their class. But it shows us how grief and loss manifest at every age and how the community should respond and help the youth go through it. And I did that intentionally because I think sometimes that gets lost. I had
yeah,
mentioned earlier that when there's a school crisis,
mm,
a school shooting, a death, a tragedy, something, one assembly is not going to help, right? We can't have one assembly, bring some mental health therapists, to the school for one day and then say, okay, everyone go back to class and that's it. There needs to be a process. If it was a crisis on the school grounds, then there could be a safety concern, right?
Mm,
We don't know how that may have triggered someone. We don't know their home environment. What if they
mm,
had family member that was killed by gun violence?
mm,
Have we tended to the teachers? Have we tended to the custodians, the
mm,
people that work in the lunchroom?
mm,
We don't know how something hinders somebody. So, I also go out and train educators on just mistakes that we commonly make. And, I think helping to make sure that we prioritize mental health.
mm,
I see there's no health without mental health. So that children's book series does that. The other book series is Father, Mother, Sister, My Grief but God, Moving Forward Our Pieces
mhm,
of My Heart, which is about losing my family. It's a book, but it's also a workbook. And I did a workbook because I feel like oftentimes we have a book and it's supposed to be a self help book, but there's no companion. Where are we actually activating and writing down what we're learning? Where are we
yeah,
journaling what we should do? So I
yeah,
made a companion workbook so that people can actually take note, but also go back and say, okay, this is something that I need to do in my life to align with what I learned.
yeah,
And then I also put resources in the book, therapists, different things that people can utilize to help them wherever they are.
yeah, yeah. I love it. Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. And I don't think we realize or recognize, and I don't think I did until we had this conversation, that, and it's just my ignorance of not having children, right? So it's nothing more than that, that we all deal with grief very differently at different stages of life.
Yeah.
And we don't know what maybe a 5-year-old, 6-year-old is feeling about the loss because they've not learned how to articulate
Yes.
loss, right? They're still working on what feelings and emotions are. And even a teenager, if they're going through puberty and they're dealing with loss of any kind, whether it's loss of father, mother, whether through divorce, death, or just something that's important to them,
Right.
puberty has such a dynamic effect on our psyche and our emotions. How are they processing that with
That's
all
right.
of the other stuff that's going on in their body?
Right. Right. Which is very important to them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I, it's such a revelation that, I'm so grateful to God in this season of our lives because this wasn't readily available to our parents and
Yeah.
to those who are much older than us. And God has given us such an ability to learn and know this stuff,
Yeah.
um, and to share it and pass it on. So I know you have a workshop coming up. Can you talk about your workshop and what that's all about?
Yes, yes. So I do a webinar every week, and
Right.
the webinar focuses on grief and loss and helping people to recognize what it is, right? Helping people to really see the difference between grief and loss, but also
Mhm.
recognizing that hidden disenfranchised grief. The webinar, I'll give you the link so you can add it to your
Yes, I
your group
will.
channel.
Yes.
And the webinar helps take people to two different pathways, either guiding them towards realizing that maybe they should have grief coaching and
Mhm.
what that would mean for them and sharing it with someone else, but also on the path of if they believe that they are called to be a grief coach. We certify and train people to be grief coaches, but I like to make sure that you really are called for that, because walking alongside someone in their grief journey and sharing that sacred space with them
Mhm.
is so
Yeah.
critical.
Yes.
And it's so sensitive. So, the webinar takes you to a 5-day challenge. really learning key things about being a grief coach and how to start your grief coaching business
Right.
before you sign up for the courses. Then we also are doing at the end of November a 2-day virtual training for educators on the biggest mistakes that they make after a crisis. And I
Wow.
talked about one of them already, going back too soon
Mm-hmm.
without, really thinking about how it hindered or how it
Mm-hmm.
impacted the people
Yeah.
involved.
Yes.
um, really looking at how to bring resources into the school system, but
Mm.
also sharing our Joy in the Journey book series.
Mm.
So I'll send you that. That workshop is going to be November 21st and 22nd, for 2 days, but then our webinar is every week.
Wow. Right. So we're going to put all of Dr. D's contact details in this description, in the episode description, so you can reach out. It's a weekly webinar that she hosts. And she also has a podcast, right?
Yes, we have a podcast, The Debrief with Dr. D. Please check us out on YouTube, subscribe to our podcast. That is our media platform to get the word out. I have to get you on the podcast
I
as
look
well.
forward to it. Thank you.
We share, messages of hope,
Yeah.
inspiration, individuals who have gone through a life challenge themselves and they
Mm,
want to share and let people know that they're not alone. But
mm,
then people like you, coaches, therapists, people who are just out there inspiring the world, and nonprofit leaders that are serving, and then people who want to just really get on the podcast and let someone know, listen, I'm here to help you. You don't have to do it by yourself. So
exactly.
we upload every Tuesday,
Okay.
on the Debrief with Dr. D on our YouTube channel.
Okay. The debrief with Dr. D on YouTube. Everyone, the details will be again in
Yes.
the podcast description. Dr. D, I really want to thank you for being with me today. You are such an inspiration and a wealth of knowledge. And I'm really grateful that God has called you specifically to this type of ministry in helping people deal with grief and loss. And as you said, not everyone can walk that journey with someone, and it takes a certain kind of empathy, right? And experience to truly understand the process of what somebody might be going through.
Yeah.
So, as we close out today's episode, do you have sort of a last minute word of encouragement or of hope that you want to share with somebody who is perhaps going through something that they're grieving?
Yeah. You know, I would really just say keep getting up in the morning.
Mm,
Keep striving, keep pushing, keep getting up. I
mm,
can't tell you how many people don't get up in the morning because of grief and loss. Um, so if you can just find a way to put one step in front of the other, wake up in the morning and be grateful to God that He woke you up.
mm.
Use your community, find a community, to just sow words of encouragement into your life, because your life has meaning,
Yes,
and you not being here is not an option. So keep getting up in the morning for yourself, first of all,
yeah,
and for your family.
awesome. So true. Keep getting up every morning, no matter what you're going through.
No
Your
matter
life
what.
still has purpose,
Absolutely.
still has meaning, and all things are working together for your good.
Amen.
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 Thank you, Dr. D. It
Oh,
is
thank
an
you.
honor and a blessing to have you. It's been lovely chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much. You're doing an amazing job, and congratulations on your podcast and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. I'm so grateful to Dr. D being with us today and just really sharing about the dynamics of grief. Many of us are dealing with grief in our own way, but as she said, you don't need to do it alone. And my encouragement to you is to seek the support and help that you need, whether it's from Dr. D or another counselor, psychotherapist, or coach. We're here to help you. We're here to support you on that journey. Whatever you're grieving, whether it be the loss of a loved one, a friend, whether it's the loss of a job, the impact of your identity through sickness, or whether it's even the breaking up of a relationship, the loss of a relationship with someone. We're here to help you. So if you need support, check out the podcast description and reach out to either Dr. D. You can also contact me and schedule a discovery call, and we can have a quick chat. But in the meantime, remember, you are not alone. Your life has purpose. God is not through with you yet. And it will work out for your good. All you have to do is make a decision today to change, to start something. So God bless you. Have an awesome week. Until next time, I'll see you on the Your Deep Life for Christian Women podcast. Bye for now.